Awesome. So this morning we looked specifically at the faith, specifically the untamed faith of Jesus, not just the kind of artificial certainty that we kind of try to work up in ourselves, but the assurance that comes to us from another, from an encounter with Christ. And this afternoon I want to take it further then, and that is into the theme of hope. And first of all, want to look at this relationship between faith and hope. And I'm going to do it in three ways. We're going to see how does faith relate to your past? How does faith relate to your present? And how does faith relate to your future? And let's put faith here. Now let me quickly can you help me remember those four aspects of what we spoke of in terms of this experience that is beyond description, this experience of faith. The first one is, it was unforeseen, surprising. It's not just a predictable certainty. The second one is unbearable. It's both and. Sometimes it's contradictory experiences in the same moment. He's risen, he's alive, but he's not here. It's like absence and presence. Both those contradictory experiences. The third one was beyond language. It transgresses the borders of linguistics. We find it difficult to confine it to our concepts. And then the last one, cannot be controlled, grasped. The more we behold the risen Jesus, the more we are transformed by the subject. It's not a subject that we get under control. But if we do, then God becomes a nice, tame lion that we keep in our own private zoo. Okay. But no, the true God is always more than what I have grasped, always beyond what I have defined, always drawing me to what is new and surprising. So this kind of faith, how does it relate to the past? If you think of that faith and the past, I think one of the things in which our perspective of the past is transformed by faith. And maybe I'll just write the word down and then I'll explain. But faith, to a large extent, looking to the past, is a perspective of gratitude. Now, very often when you go through something, you don't know how you are ever going to be grateful for it. You know, there's many experiences in life that's shockingly painful. I remember a while ago we spoke with some very precious friends of ours of a traumatic experience they had in losing a child at a young age. And this is many years ago now. And she battled. It's one of those experiences that's the saturated phenomena. It's overwhelming. You don't know how to describe it. But as she tried to describe what happens as she looks back at it now, she says, I don't know how to explain it to people, but my only way of describing it now is gratitude. Now, in this situation, there was just pain. There wasn't gratitude, there was just the shock of the moment. But somehow relationship with God transforms our perspective of the past, even the things that were incredibly painful, inexplicable, and transforms it into gratitude. Maybe we're not grateful for the actual event, the difficulty or the pain that happened, but somehow we can look back and say, God is not good because he prevents all evil, because evil happens. But somehow, despite evil, it's never the end of the story. God's goodness is measured by the fact that he remains faithful. And despite the stuff that happened, here you are. He's the God that always creates new possibilities to love, new possibilities to live. He's the God who always, despite what seems to be the end of your world, he's the God of possibility. It says, despite the fact that you might not know how to go on, here are some possibilities that will take you further. So can you see that faith looking to the past begins to transform even your memories of pain and regret, begins to transform them into gratitude. Now, what is faith's relationship to the present? You see, a wrong attitude towards the past is one in which I'm continually occupied with how I've messed up or how other people have wronged me, where I'm continually occupied in how it should have been done and what I could have done, what they should have said, what they did say. And you can get so occupied with the past that your present disappears. Have you ever been with somebody who's not there? I think all of us have experienced it where maybe you weren't there, somebody talking to you, but you're still busy with the meeting you just had or with what happened yesterday. And so a wrong relationship with the past is one in which instead of gratitude, there is regret, there is anger, and there might be good reasons for it, but if regret and anger and revenge, and if that is your relationship with the past, your present almost disappears, and it's almost like the past takes a hold of your future and convinces you that your future is just a repetition of your past. That your future has got nothing more to offer you than the same cycle of regret and pain and anger. But faith opens up a space between the past and the future. Faith opens up a space in which in this moment I can live in awe and in wonder at the beauty of what is, where the past has not become this, and we've all seen it and we can all understand it, that sometimes people have had such an experience that they're unable to see the beauty of the moment. There's a film, a veil over them, and everything's interpreted based on the pain of the past, based on the regret of the past. Faith comes to remove that veil and allows us again to experience a present that is uninterpreted. You see, it's your certainty, your story, your logic that wants to make everything fit into your predetermined script. Faith is what frees us from that script and says, you can just enjoy the beauty of this moment for what it is. The meaning of this moment for what it is. And so faith's relationship to the present, I must choose a short word. Let's call it awe. You are not in awe and absolutely certain at the same time. Okay. You are not overwhelmed and absolutely in control at the same time. You're not disorientated, but have it all together at the same time. Or is that moment where your story is starting to shake and rattle, and your logic is revealing its fragments because you're encountering something that is more than what you've known before. And part of the new of what you're in awe of is the beauty, the meaning that is beyond what is known. And then we come to this afternoon session, and that is faith's relationship to the future, or faith's perspective of the future. We can summarize that in the word hope. Okay. So, and all of this, is founded on love. The past and your gratitude is founded on the faithfulness of God. The present faith worketh by love. All of this is founded on the love of God, but we'll get to that tomorrow. I just wanted to give that little relationship, and we're going to specifically look at this portion of faith, hope, and the future. Now, the biblical hope that we read about in many of the stories begins with a people who are in desperate need, a people who are outcasts, a people who are slaves, a people who are suppressed. And hope within that context is very definitely tied to the hope of deliverance, that our current situation is unbearable, and we hope to be delivered, we hope to be rescued, we hope to be freed from slavery, to get out of Egypt, etc. So that is most definitely part of the definition of hope, is that my current situation is unbearable, but there's hope in a God who hears the cries of the oppressed, who hears the cries of those who are suffering injustice, and he will make a way. So that is part of the story of hope within the scriptures. But as we said before, in Jesus something happens that doesn't just fulfill the expectations of Israel, but transforms their expectation. And I want to look at how Jesus transforms hope. Because I think, like many of you, I grew up in the kind of Christian environment in which hope was mainly focused on the otherworldly existence after this earth. It's like, make peace with it, this is going to be crappy your whole life long. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I mean, the devil's growing stronger, the Antichrist is growing wiser, and his influence is getting worse. And you just all we hope for is Jesus save us from this rotten world. Is that your experience? Was many of your experience? So in many Christian contexts, hope was just linked to an otherworldly existence after this life. Now, the incarnation transforms that. Because the incarnation is God declaring, I can exist, live, move, and have my being in this flesh, on this earth, right here, right now. So the incarnation transforms our expectation that instead of it just being otherworldly, other time, other place, my hope is no longer just linked to a future date, but it's linked to a person. Christ in me, the hope of glory, the expectation that heaven can come to earth. The expectation that God is at home in human bodies, right here, right now. That John 3:16 doesn't say, for God so loved you, that he made a way for you to escape this rotten world. But rather, John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world. That he gave. Not that he comes to take you away, but rather that this creation from the very beginning was God's idea. And it's still his idea to give himself in your existence to have an influence and a life right here on this planet that is fulfilling, that is meaningful, that creates new beauty. Can you see how the incarnation transforms hope? Yes, if you are in a desperate situation of slavery, of being oppressed, there is, of course, a hope that God is the deliverer as well. But our hope is not just a religious, otherworldly hope. It is a transformed hope that says, this life, this body, this flesh is where God wants to live and move and have his being. So it's very much linked to possibilities right here, right now. Now, I want to kind of touch on something that many of you might be familiar with, because we move around in audiences that we maybe call it the grace movement or the finished work movement. You're all familiar with that terminology, and I kind of want to touch on something that I think was, in some of these groups, misunderstood. Or can I just say there's something even deeper than what we've said. Now, the finished work kind of theology, which is based on Jesus' words in the book of John, where on the cross he cries out, it is finished. And many have interpreted that saying, because like me, they've come out of a religious tradition where we continually try to earn God's favor, try to earn God's blessing through our good behavior. And so it's a beautiful revelation to realize that Jesus achieved what we try to achieve through our religious activities. And so in those terms, they say, it is finished. Christ has done it. Our responsibility is to enjoy the completion and the perfection of what he's done. But to a large extent, the finished work kind of theology then becomes so focused on it is finished, there's nothing to be done, that the whole theme of hope becomes irrelevant. Because everything's been done. Your only responsibility is to discover what has already been done and to then enjoy what has already been done. But there's really nothing new to be done. And so that kind of misinterpretation of it is finished, I think, robs us of the incredible power of hope and the realization that the only reason Jesus finished anything is to begin something new. Okay? The goal was not simply, it is finished. The goal is, behold, a whole new creation. So it's not just that God brings to an end the old era and now we forever must live in just looking back that is past and we must enjoy what He's done, but rather that the very nature of God is to create possibilities for you to participate with Him in creating something new. And that brings me to another aspect of hope. And again, maybe the words I'm searching for, maybe at first you might find it a little bit offensive. That's not why I use the words. Maybe a little bit, but kind of, I realize that some of my ideas, they are sometimes so well established that if they're not properly shaken, I can't think beyond them. And so I want to give you some ideas about hope. And I might shake some other ideas first. It's not that the ideas I shake is completely irrelevant or wrong. It's just, it really needs something significant to happen for us to see something from a different perspective. I'm sure as ministers you've experienced that you can basically talk about anything and people will hear what they want to hear. Because we are so used to fitting whatever we hear into our story. You know, and so all the contradictions is kind of suppressed and we just find what fits into our story, and then when we say thank you, you've confirmed what I've always believed. And really revelation is the kind of shaking that brings you to a place where you say, thank you, I realize I've been wrong. So, quickly, I want to say something about the future. One way in which people have hope in the future is through the idea that God has a plan for your future and He's in control. And no matter what happens, He's going to remain in control and that plan is going to come to pass. And people find hope in that. I want to give you a different way of looking at that. And the way in which I want to give you a different way of looking at that is to compare the idea of plan with the idea of story. Now, story and the plan works a little bit differently. The best plans have got very few surprises. Actually, the best plans have got no surprises. The best stories have got many surprises. Do you agree? We've sometimes gone to movies, and in the first 5 minutes, I tell Marianne, I don't know why they bothered. I know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and what they think is going to be a twist. I can just see the whole plot. It's so boring. But the best stories are those that has you wondering. the stories that confuses you, totally disappoints you at one time, and then suddenly comes to life again. And the ending is such a revelation because the beginning now makes sense. But in the beginning did not make sense. So stories and plans are a bit different. The best plans have got few surprises. The best stories have got many surprises. The best plans try to control the future. That's the purpose of the plan. We want to specify the boundaries and keep everything within the parameters for the plan to work out. But the best stories unfold naturally. And there are things that enters them that we did not bargain for. There's parameters that connect that we didn't imagine in the beginning. Now, very often, because of our own insecurities, we have found comfort, just as we found comfort in certainty. Part of the certainty that we created is, even if we don't really know the plan, at least God does. And even if we have to acknowledge we're not in control, at least God is. And we found comfort in that perspective. And I understand why. Again, I just want to suggest to you that there's another way of looking at it. And that is, instead of God being the master architect that stands at the beginning of your life, behind you with a plan, trying to steer you into this plan. And you know, every now and then you need quite a proper slap to get you back into this plan. Instead of that being our picture of God, because you see, when God as a plan is your paradigm, what happens when things go totally wrong? There's two things. Number one, which I think is most common, I've missed the plan. Now, God might have a plan, but dear God, I don't know what it is. And I'm obviously not on the right path, because this is the part that we won't say out loud. But if this is God's plan, really, I know two guys down the road that can make better plans than that. This surely can't be God's plan. So either God's really not that talented at making plans, or we have missed the plan. That's normally the interpretation that happens when we hit the fan. And so I want to suggest another way at looking at your life story unfolding, and that is exactly that life, that God is not the master architect standing with a plan behind your life, trying to guide you within the parameters of this plan, but rather that God is the one who stands in front of us. And as Jesus introduced us to his Father, he said, to God all things are possible. Or another way of interpreting that text is, God is the possibility of all things. In other words, instead of God being the master architect with a plan behind us, God is the one in front of us creating possibilities and inviting us. Which possibility do you want to realize? Do you want to participate with me in creating something that has never been before? Do you want to participate with me in writing your story? Do you want to realize one of these possibilities and be a co-creator with me? Woo! You see, you can never reduce possibility to certainty. If something is certain, it's not possible. And if something's possible, it's not certain. We have created one massive idol, the God of certainty. Yeah. The God who has got it all under control. He's got the whole plan. And it's just you that's messing up, that's causing all this nonsense on earth. But hopefully, one day, some of us will get to the plan, with the plan. No, I think God has got this incredible freedom and peace about him, that despite whatever nonsense we find ourselves in, he creates new possibilities for us to live and create meaning and create beauty while we live. So, how do you, I'm just going to be a little bit provocative for a little bit, but how does it make you feel to relate to a God of possibility rather than certainty? Can you imagine a God that doesn't have a plan? That might be very uncomfortable for many of us. Now, I want to balance it, because that's always a good idea. And that is, there are room for plans. But you know what? I think what's happened, traditionally, I thought overall there's this massive plan, and then in between I sometimes go off script into my own little story. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe there's this incredible open freedom, the God of possibility, a massive story where the ending has not been determined. And God is the one in the present, and sometimes it's good to make plans. So plans aren't all bad. And we had to plan to months before to get tickets, because they're cheaper when you get it months before. And we had to plan where we want to be, who we want to see. So plans are good. And we had a rough idea where we're going to be, etc. But still, the most memorable, most beautiful moments of our journey are those unexpected, surprising stuff that we could never plan. Those conversations, those connections, those moments that can never be confined to a plan. Imagine me saying, okay, Eugene and them especially drove down here to spend some time with me. I'm going to make an hour on Saturday to enjoy my son. Okay, between 2 and 3, I'm really going to have fun with him. And plan it all out. How boring. But to know that we together and fun's going to happen. Sometimes too much. Sometimes it gets out of hand. It's fun. But it's those kind of surprising stuff that makes this story blossom. And so I think our hope is transformed because it's no longer born out of this insecurity that I need a God who's in control, that has a plan to give me any hope. But rather it's now born from this realization that despite anything that happens, even things that I consider not of God, God is the one that creates new possibilities, that invites me to participate with him in writing a story that has never been written before, a living hope. See, again, the resurrection, 1 Peter 1 verse 3, you've been born anew. to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If there's anything that should inject life into our hope, it is the resurrection. Because that is totally unexpected, totally unexplained, totally beyond what we could have imagined ourselves. The resurrection is this challenge that God says, my mercies are new every morning. The hope that I stir within you is not this mechanical formula of saying, when I grew up as a young boy, and the Word of Faith ministry, which had many benefits and beautiful things that I still enjoy, but as a teenager, for me, it all became formula. Okay, so if I want a new bicycle, hope is that image that I now create in my mind. I must picture that bicycle exactly. Faith is that quality in which I act as if I already have it, and I speak as if I already have it, and I just exercise this formula. And then if I keep that picture and that speaking, and there is some natural value to those principles. Okay, but that's not the radical, life-transforming hope that a living relationship with the Creator awakens in you. It's much more than that. This hope is that sense, that deep, deep sense that something truly new, truly beautiful, and truly meaningful is possible for my life. Why don't you just sense that now? Papa, may each one of us experience your call, experience your whisper, that there's something truly beautiful and meaningful and new possible for our lives. See, the finished work doesn't mean that God has done it all and we can only discover and enjoy what He has done. Let's make it even more personal. If we think of who you are, what you are, there's one interpretation, and I held to that for a long time, in which I imagined somewhere in me there's something called the true me, and it's Andre. And what that is was designed and by God. He had this perfect design of the true Andre. He had the blueprint, the plans, and He created it. And my life purpose was really to discover that true Andre and then to be it. Now, the problem with that picture is that, first of all, the true me is assumed to be a static, predetermined form that I just need to discover and be. Whereas everything that is alive is moving and changing and dynamic. The true you is not something predetermined. And you see, you have no participation in your true you with that picture. Your only contribution is to acknowledge it and to be it, but you don't have any creative part in forming yourself in that ideology. But what if there is no defined design for who you are, but rather the God of possibility says what you truly are, you can co-create with me. You can participate in your own becoming. That's why the scriptures are not that much interested in giving us stale statements about who you are. I can remember also from those previous religious days, we'd have all our affirmation. I am the righteousness of God, and I am this, and I am that, and the more I say it, the more I believe I will be it, etc. But the scriptures are much more interested in speaking about the relationship with God than it is about giving predefined statements of your true self. Yes. In fact, in John 17, verse 3, Jesus says, "This is absolute life, that you know the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ." In 1 John 4, verse 7, it says, "Those who love know God." In other words, even the act of knowing is not something you do purely theoretically. The act of knowing God only takes place in the act of loving another. And so if you love another, you know God. Wow. That's quite amazing, because I know people from such diverse backgrounds who love. Do you think that in their love of their family, of others, maybe there's some truth to that scripture, that maybe they're already encountering God? Or they might not define Him in the same terms that you do. And God is busy unveiling Himself in that act of love. And so this living hope is not the expectation for a static plan or a static me to eventually come into realization. But this living hope is linked to a relationship to a God who always surprises us and who always involves us in the process of creation. That your life has not been determined. Your life is not even certain. Your life is possible. And you can participate in making certain possibilities real. Marianne could maybe tell you her perspective of this story if she wants to. I'm going to give my perspective quick. But a couple of 3-4 years ago, we were ministering in Europe. And because we were traveling and ministering the whole time, we tried to take a week per month where we did not minister, and we weren't with lots of people. We just wanted some time on our own, try and be normal for a week. And we kind of got that right after a while. So we're much more relaxed now, because now we at least have a base and we travel. So we love it when we travel. But we were in this period, we had a meeting in the Netherlands, and then we had a week open, and our next meeting was in Switzerland. So we thought, what will we do that week? We somehow came up with the bright idea, let's cycle from the Netherlands to Switzerland. It was only, 1,600 kilometers. And we did cycle when we were children. So we should remember how to do it. So we had our last meeting, and the host where we stayed, they had an Airbnb, and they had 2 old little bicycles just for their guests to go to town and back. And they said, we can use it. And we said, that's great. We're just going to cycle to Switzerland. And thankfully, the last meeting we had in the Netherlands, a friend of ours came to us and said, I hear you're going to cycle and you're going to use those bicycles. He said, I've got a better idea for you. I wanted to do it with my wife a few years ago, so we bought touring bikes, and we cycled for about half an hour, and she said, this is not for me. So they've been standing in the garage for the past 2 years, so you're welcome to use them. So thankfully we had good equipment, and we cycled for And we knew that the train system was good, so if we didn't make it within a week, we could just take a train for the rest of the journey. So we cycled the first 6 days. On the 5th day, I must tell this. On the 5th day, we came to somewhere in Germany. There was one of the churches where Luther was a minister at one stage, but there's this angel praying outside, a statue of an angel, and it's covered in pigeon poop. It's all white. So Marianne took a picture of this little angel and posted it on Facebook saying, sometimes, despite our prayers, shit happens. And got into a lot of trouble with that. Well, she did not realize how prophetic she is. Because the next day, we were sitting and we were drinking a Radler because we knew that we now had to catch the train to be in time for our next meeting. And we've done 400 kilometers or so. So we were celebrating the journey of the past 6 days. And she sat back into a yellow jacket hornet. And it's a painful sting. And it keeps on stinging. It doesn't just sting once, it stings. And so I knocked it off, and I flicked it so hard I broke half its body off and took that out of her back as well. And the guy came and he put ice on it. And so the ice took the pain away. She felt much better. And we started walking back to our Airbnb room, the worst one ever. But in any case, not all of them are great. Just before we got in there, we went into a shop to get some water, and she suddenly had this reaction, where her heart was in her throat, tingling in her hand, and she said, get some antihistamine. And I started looking for antihistamine in a shop they didn't have. By the time I looked back, she was on the floor. So I just asked them, please phone emergency services. I ran to our room because I knew we had some antihistamine in the room. When I came back, she was unconscious. I kind of had to slap her awake a bit to get the pill in. And as she woke back up, she was like, didn't know where she was, and she was trying to hold things back. And the emergency services were there in 2 minutes because the hospital was just round the corner, thankfully. And they injected her, etc. And then, as she came by, these poor emergency workers, she just wanted to hug and love on them all. I mean, by the time we got to the hospital, they said, we're going to do a drug test before we take him. I said, you're welcome to do whatever tests. So a little while later, I saw her. And she said, I was gone. I said, yeah, I know you lost consciousness. She said, no, I was in a beautiful place. And suddenly I realized how serious this was because, in the midst of everything happening, I've got to think what to do. I can't get emotional about the situation. I've got to just work out. And so as she said this, I realized, wow, this was more serious than what I realized. So I said, where was it? Was it a city or a field? I had so many questions. And she said it wasn't actually not anywhere else. It was right here. But everything that was temporal faded, and the beauty and the meaning of everything became visible. And what was love was eternal. So, she struggled as we spoke about, this saturated phenomena. You don't know how to find words. And that's why even when she came back and touched things, it was, she said, like coming from a 4-dimensional world into this 3-dimensional world. And I said, and who was there? I expected her to maybe have met her dad or her mom or whatever, And she said, you were there. And for me, that was overwhelming because from my perspective, I was losing her. But from her perspective, there's no distance in love. No, I was there. And even as the next day, because we went, she's pumped full of medicine, and we go back to this Airbnb room from hell, and it was so hot. It was a heat wave, so I couldn't sleep. I just sat sweating on the windowsill, watching the rats run down the side. And that was the one bad experience. They had many other beautiful experiences. But just to give you this experience, and then no sleep during the night and full of drugs, and the next morning we try and take our bikes onto a train in a language we can't read, and cell phones, it doesn't work. It was a hectic time. But eventually we're on the train, heading in the right direction. And for the first time, I could allow myself to feel what happened. And I often find it very helpful to then write. And as I started writing about the experience, I looked at Marianne and thought, she could have been gone. I could have, it was so close. I could have done this journey on my own today. And suddenly the emotion of it all came. It's just very uncomfortable for all the other well-behaved German people on the train. Because I was just weeping and writing. And, but in that moment, I realized what a gift every moment is. God's not the one that guarantees you the next moment. He's the one that makes it possible. He's the one who extends the gift of your existence moment by moment by moment, inviting you to co-create the beauty of that moment, inviting you to co-create the meaning of that moment, inviting you to see the wonder of the relationships you're in, inviting you to live in awe of the present and to experience the excitement that the future is a gift by this God of possibility, this God of love that says, your life is my opportunity to love in this world. In you, God has a personality He has nowhere else. In you, God has a connection and relationship with people that He has nowhere else. In you, God has a smile, has a connection, a tangibility that He has nowhere else. God is excited about your life. And if you can just sense that excitement, that is a living hope. Ooh. He's excited about your life. That's why He extends another moment. That's why He gives another day. Thank you, Papa. Thank you, Papa. Do you want to come and sing and talk? Whatever. Thank you for this living hope, Jesus, that you birthed in us through the resurrection. Thank you that our born-again experience is not just one religious memory of something that happened in 1972, but this daily experience that life is new, that this day is another possibility to join with you in making this world beautiful and meaningful. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Take it in, close your eyes, feel the warmth of my smile. I'm the one who knows you from within. I see through your eyes. Take it in, now open your eyes. See the world through my smile. I'm the one who knows them from within. I see through their eyes and I say, enjoy this moment, it is yours. Breathe in the fragrance of our love, for I am ready to live, I'm ready to laugh, I am ready to love through your life. I'm so ready to see, ready to heal, I am ready to be through your beautiful life. We take it in and we open our eyes. We feel the warmth of your smile. You're the one who knows us from within. You see through our eyes and you say, enjoy this moment, it is ours. Breathe in the fragrance of our love. I am so ready to live, I'm ready to laugh, I am ready to love through your life. I am ready to see, ready to heal, I am ready to be through your beautiful life. And there are infinite possibilities, infinite opportunities, for I'm hovering over your life. In the midst of all that strife, I'm ready to make all things new.